Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai 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 Sita Rama, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, 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 Jai Gurudev, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Murli Baba, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Sita Rama, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Sangam, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, bolo, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Jai Gurudev, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Jai Montezada, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Jai Papa Ji, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sita Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Sitaram, Jai Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sitaram, Jai Jai Ram, Sitaram, Jai Jai Ram, Sitaram, Jai Jai Ram, Sitaram. Shivuji Baba ki, Papa Ji ki, Ramana ki, Sangha ki.
Quite a delightful chant. So I want to read from David's blog a little something that he wrote, and this is from February of 2015, and it's choosing only joyful thoughts. And he has a picture of Papa, and the caption is Papa Ram Dass in joyful bliss. And this was at a time when David was talking about Marie Kondo's tidying up. So that's his reference here in the beginning. If we apply the lessons of tidying to our thinking, then we would start on the first of two stages: internal house cleaning, discarding any thoughts that do not bring us joy, recognizing that thought is the creative powerhouse that directs our emotions, energy, and activity, then choosing only joyful thoughts and the supreme bliss of God is the only course that makes sense. Yet we see that this is not what many people do. Instead, they remain focused on those thoughts that produce unhappiness, with so many of those things outside the direct control of the individual. So instead of choosing joy, there's too much of choosing suffering instead. This can seem crazy for anyone to choose unhappiness, and yet we know from firsthand experience that we do exactly that. The natural question comes, why? The answers can vary, but it comes down to the same thing. A part of us thinks a negative thought will make us safe and happy. For instance, a state of depression can seem like a safe place to retreat. A child may seek out a closet, make a nest of blankets and pillows inside, and close the closet door to darken the room. Inside the closet, all the chaos, shame, and fear disappear. Depression can initially feel like that closet, all safe and warm. And every other negative behavior has a root cause in seeking happiness, but in all the wrong places. Again, why? Because you are not one whole person yet. You have many parts of yourself, parts that vie with one another for fulfillment of varied needs. The key to resolving this inner conflict can be found in learning some basic spiritual principles and then teaching them to all the various parts of yourself. One such principle is to choose joy. Absolute joy is ultimately a spiritual gift, not just luck of the draw or just for a fortunate few, but grace that comes to all. However, the key to having joy is to be really open to receiving it. There are many who say they want happiness, but parts of them do not believe they deserve it, or that they get it, then it will be taken from them. So, goes the reasoning, better not to even think that happiness can be mine. However, there is no stopping a determined soul, especially true when individual will is united with divine will. Decide to choose joy, discard every other thought, you open the door to grace and real joy. Bliss flows to you, of this I'm sure. And then David goes on to talk about the flame exercise, which I know some of you use. When a thought comes to you and does not spark joy, then discard it. See with your mind's eye a flame 12 to 14 inches in front of you, and then send the unwanted thought into this flame. The light of God. See those thoughts you are discarding flowing into the flame, and see the flame consume the thought and take it up and away, purified in those flames. In this way, you can choose only thoughts that give you joy. Let everything else go. Moods, unhealthy desires, compulsions, and negativity can be gotten rid of beginning now. Decide to think only of light, universal love, and ever new joy, and change your life never to be the same. David had the greatest wisdom. So the talk, my talk for tonight is similar to this, and it's called Choosing God. And there's a psalm that talks about choosing God. It's Psalms 119, 173. And this is from the King James Bible, and it says, "Let my supplication come before thee. Deliver me according to thy word. My lips shall utter praise when thou hast taught me thy statutes. My tongue shall speak of thy word, for all thy commandments are righteousness. Let thine hand help me, for I have chosen thy precepts. I have longed for thy salvation, O Lord, and thy law is my delight. Let my soul live, and it shall praise thee, and let thy judgments help me. I have gone astray like a lost sheep. Seek thy servant, for I do not forget thy commandments." Now it's said that Jesus, in the Old Testament, Moses had 10 commandments, and in the New Testament, Jesus had but 2. So this is from Matthew 22, 36 to 40. And the question comes to Jesus, "Teacher, which is thy greatest commandment in the law?" And Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments." So the wonderful thing about this existence and what God has given us is that we have free will. And you can put your thoughts on anything you like. Now, sometimes we have thought patterns that David referred to in his writing of compulsions, negative thoughts, depressive thoughts. And we think to ourselves, how can we get away from these thoughts? They are plaguing me, they're bothering me. And it's important to realize that we're having these thoughts because we've developed a habit pattern of thinking in those patterns, of thinking of those kinds of thoughts. Now, here's the wonderful thing about that. Oftentimes, when there's a problem or a negative situation, you can flip it around and you can turn it to the positive. So in this case, you would say that if I've developed these thought patterns, if I've developed habits of thinking this way, then I should be able to develop a habit of thinking a different way. And this was David's admonition in his writing: choose joy, choose joyful thoughts. So this power that we have, that we can administer over our own thoughts, we can choose God. And you might say, well, of course you would choose God. I mean, that's choosing bliss. It's choosing joy. It's choosing upliftment. It's choosing truth. It's choosing light. And yet, knowing all of that, we still find ourselves thinking about other things and thinking, actually, sometimes consciously going away from God. We even catch ourselves while we do it, and we go, I don't care. I'm going to do this. I want to do this. I'm going to do this. And we go ahead and we actually distance ourselves. And you say to yourself, and we can often observe ourselves, and we can say, well, why do I do this? Why on earth do I do this? Why would I do this? And David gives us some big clues there when he says that we're not our whole selves yet. We are many different sides of our personality. There's many sides. There's There's the side of us that very powerfully wants to go to God, and there's a side of us that very powerfully does not want to go to God. And there's all these in-between thoughts, and they're all mixed up in our same person. And a big part of this of the spiritual path is becoming aligned, bringing all these different aspects of yourself into alignment so you're 100% seeking God. Now, I used to say to David, I would say, now, David, I don't understand something. I sit down, I meditate, I get lifted up in bliss. And I think to myself, as I'm lifted up in God, I think, why am I thinking about anything else? Why in my life am I pursuing anything else? This is all I should spend my time doing, is only pursuing God. This is the ultimate. This feels so wonderful. It feels so pure. It is so uplifting. And then that consciousness, as you get out into the world and you start interacting, that consciousness gradually drifts down. And pretty soon there you are, pursuing all those things that you've developed habits towards pursuing, thinking about things, thinking about not keeping your mind on God, perhaps engaging in a bad habit or two. And you think to yourself, why? And I would say to David, I would say, I get it. I understand it for somebody that has never experienced God and never felt that. But I sure don't understand it for those of us who have experienced that and know the feeling of God and has touched the hem of God's garment, and we know the feeling of that. And why would we go against that? And David, of course, was so delightful when he would answer. He would smile and he would say, well, because you're of mixed nature. And I would think about it and I would think, yes, David, you are right. I am of mixed nature. And so until we are all 100% of God and 100% toward God, we are of mixed nature. So how do we align that? And that's really our path. This is what we do. So all the practices that we do, the meditation, we do Kriya to activate our spine and get that Kundalini moving, cooling and moving up our spine. When we think, we read, we think about God, we read stories about God, we come together, we worship, and we try gradually, as these thoughts start pervading our mind, we start integrating God into our lives, into all aspects of our lives. And I found that I used to think, okay, well, God is certainly present here. God is present in this holy person, or God is present in this holy place, or in this church, or in this altar, or in this uplifted saint. But look at all these parts of the world where God is not. And gradually over time, as you start to carry God with you more and more in your heart, you find that God, it's like carrying a torch or a light, and you're going through a great expansion of caves or a huge mansion, and every room you come into, that room becomes illuminated with this light, and you realize that there is no place that God is not. So you take really dire situations, you take tough situations, you take places that there's nasty, terrible things going on, and yes, the vibration is low, and yes, it is terrible, but even that place, there is God, and we can bring that. So even within our own selves and our own minds and our own thoughts, if we have thoughts that aren't very pretty, it's just like exploring the world. If we have thoughts of negative emotions, anger, vengeance, jealousy, deceit, all of those things that we've experienced, we can bring the light of God into those rooms, into those aspects of ourselves, and we can change that. We can illuminate that, and we can gradually start to become all of one, all of God. Now, here's the irony of it. It sounds like it's such a chore. It's changing your thinking. It's changing your thought patterns. But what an incredible chore to have. What an incredible job to have, is to bring God into every aspect of your life. Yes, it's a challenge, and that's what makes it beautiful. It is difficult sometimes to change our patterns and our habits. And sometimes these emotions come to us and these thoughts come to us, and we think to ourselves, I don't have any control over this. This is just coming to me. What can I do? I just woke up this morning and I was feeling so down and so depressed, or I was overcome with worry. I didn't know what to do. And I'm worried about this situation. I don't know what's going to happen. And there is no situation out there that you can't put your mind on God in that situation and make it better in that moment. So if worry comes to you, step outside of that worry just a fraction of an inch and go, God, look at this worry. Where is this worry coming from? Do you think this worry has any merit? Do you think this is something we should even be thinking about? And have a little conversation with God about what you're feeling in that moment. Perhaps what you would like to feel. And I suggest that there's very little that we could possibly go through in life that isn't made better, isn't made bearable, even if it's very difficult, that isn't made so that we can carry that load if we have God with us, and if our mind is on God in that and that experience. People say that going to God is difficult and going to God is tough. And yes, perhaps it is, in that we have to change our old patterns. We have to change our thoughts. But think about how tough it is to not go to God. Think about how tough it is to experience that separation. If you've ever felt loneliness, if you've ever felt all by yourself and that you didn't have a friend and that you were isolated, that is the feeling of separation from God. That is what you're feeling. There is no loneliness with God. When you're with God, when you're uplifted in that spirit, in that vibration, you feel one with everything, and a remarkable thing happens. Everything seems to feel one with you. So when you're uplifted in that God consciousness, and I know you've had this experience yourself, you go out into public, you go into your workplace, you start interacting with other people, and you can see the smiles on their faces as they look at you. You can see the gleam in their eye. You can see how they react to you with a smile. And it's true with just about everybody, but it's especially true of little children, because they don't have so many filters. They just react to whatever they're seeing. And you come along and you are uplifted and you are with God in that moment, and they just love it. They come running to you. It's almost fun sometimes to be in that state and encounter somebody that's perhaps a little dark or a little sour, and just see a smile come over their face and see them brighten up and a little flicker of light illuminate them. It's wonderful. So if you think going to God is tough, what's really tough is living in separation from God. And the only reason that you might think it's preferable, or we might defer to that, is because of our long-standing habit of not being with God. So in this lifetime, what's so exciting is that we have chosen God. We've chosen, and this is a big choose. This is a big decision. We've chosen to dramatically and fundamentally and profoundly change our lives, change the course of our lives, change where we were headed, where we are headed, changing our trajectory to the most positive, the most uplifting, the most truly life-changing destination and path that there can be. So I think it's interesting, because in our society, we've got people can choose many things, and there's a big movement towards self-help. You know, you want to improve yourself. You want to think better thoughts. You want to be a better person. You want to be physically more active. You want to be healthier. You want to be smarter. You want to be all of these things. And there is no greater self-help routine. There is no greater path towards being the best you possible than going to God. And even if we don't do it perfectly, we are on the path. You are trying to focus your mind on God. You're putting your mind on God. In times of trouble, you say, God, please be with me. Please help me. In times of joy, in times of plenty, in times of victory, we say, thank you for God. Thank you for bringing this to me. Let's do this together. Let's share this. Let's be delighted in this. It is the most incredible way to live a life. And it's fascinating because, it's a challenge. Sometimes it's very tough to live with ourselves. And we say, even though we're on the path, even though we're devoted, even though we chant, we meditate, we have our rituals, we have our altars, we listen to talks, and we are devoted. Yet within all of that, we still beat ourselves up sometimes and say, what kind of a devotee am I? Couldn't I be doing better? Shouldn't I be more advanced by now? And those are just thoughts of detraction. This is us, this crazy part of ourselves that for some reason wants to tear us down. If you have those thoughts, if those thoughts come to you, say, you know what? I'm just going to give this to God. So these thoughts of not being a good devotee, I'm handing this over to God. I don't, ultimately, we are just trying to get good with God. We are just trying to get in and focus on God and be with God. And what that looks like getting there, if we're not perfect meditators, if we don't get on the poster of the cover of Meditation Monthly or the Yoga Journal, that's okay. You don't have to look perfect. You don't have to play any certain role. You just have to keep striving towards God. And we all do that in our own way. And I love all of our grand and beautiful assortment of ROMs. I love that some people are stern and some people are joyful and some people are funny and some people are serious and some people are intellectual. And I love that this beautiful, joyful bouquet of our family, our spiritual family, going to God. We're all different, but we all love God and we're all getting there in our own way. So this choosing God, this idea of choosing God, is something that we've come to. And you wouldn't be here tonight if you hadn't done that. And it's a big choose. But here's what's interesting, is that choice, that decision to go to God is something that we're doing constantly. We're doing it all the time. And the more in all these little situations, when you're out in your daily life, and you're choosing to put your mind on God when you're driving down the road, and you choose to put your mind on God when you get stuck in a traffic jam, and you choose to put your mind on God when you're interacting with the barista getting you your coffee, and you're choosing to put your mind on God as just as you're walking along, or as you're starting your workday, or as you're starting to get busy. All of those choices, all of those decisions to go to God are cumulative. They add up. And they start forming a habit, and they start forming a powerful habit. And we change. We change as aspirants. So you're not the same person that you were 10 years ago. You're not the same person that you were 5 years ago. You're striving. You are getting closer. And we can tell by the vibration that we feel, and we can tell by how we are and our thoughts, how we conduct ourselves. And, for many, we say, well, God or David tells us to choose joy. And I would like to choose joy, but I don't always feel joyful. So does that mean that I'm not a very good spiritual seeker? I'm not a very good devotee. And it doesn't mean that. it's so interesting because often we're not in a good position to judge. And often we are sometimes hard on ourselves. But the one thing that we can do, the one thing that God has given us that we have complete control over is we get to choose. So in all of these little moments, we can choose God. And all of these little moments become cumulative, they add up, and they start forming a habit of choosing God and going to God. And you can start to feel your life change. Now, as you begin to focus more on God, and as your thoughts are more on God, and as you're more tuned into God, a secondary thing starts to happen. And what happens is you start getting guided. You start having some intuition. Sometimes it's very subtle, and sometimes it's very obvious. But as we invite God into our lives, and as we tune ourselves more to his mind, to God's mind, and God's vibrations, he starts to guide our thoughts and starts to guide our actions. So this is a tremendous step. It's a tremendous transition that takes place in the devotee, in yourself, in a spiritual aspirant, to start feeling this guidance, to start feeling this God within, starting to let us know and give us direction on what we should do, what we should say. And once again, even amongst that, as that starts to come, that's a choice. We're constantly choosing for God or choosing away from God. So as we get this guidance, as you want to ascend, you choose to listen to that. And the more you listen to that guidance, the more it comes and the stronger it becomes. And there's sometimes kind of a thrill that comes with this, where you get an intuition and you're sort of in an uplifted state, and you feel that this is coming from God. You feel, yes, I can feel that. I can recognize that feeling of purity and that feeling of upliftment. And so we choose to follow that. And that's how gradually, through our choosing, through us opening our arms and saying, God, come to me, come into my life, help guide me, help make my life into something that is a joy to you. And God starts to change us, and our lives change. And as we follow this God intuition, we see things unfold before us that are surprising, things that are unexpected, in some cases delightful, and in some cases just inspiring awe and wonder. And how did that turn out so well? And how did that happen just so perfectly? And then you think back and you go, oh yes, Father, that's you. That's you doing this through me. I just had a wonderful experience this past Monday, and I didn't know what to expect. And Jill, bless her heart, put on a beautiful retreat this past month, or actually at the very beginning of this month, and up at Cedar Lodge, and there was two gentlemen from Portland that came, that aren't a regular part of our group. One of them is David, and he came to this retreat last year, and he liked it so much he brought a friend of his named Ed. And Ed was just delightful. He was fun to talk to. They both were. They're just wonderful additional ROMs to our group, that delightful. And so Ed and I exchanged information, and of course I never thought I'd hear from him again. Well, he got a hold of me a week or so ago, and he said, I really want to come to Ashland. My wife is out of town, and I've got some free time. I can do this. I'd really like to come down and visit you for a day and attend service. And I thought, well, wow, isn't this something? He's coming from a long ways away. So Portland is about 300 miles from Ashland. So it's a long drive. And I I thought, well, yes, of course, if he wants to come, he should come. And so I emailed him back and I said, yes, Ed, come on down. And he said, well, I just plan on shadowing you for the day. And I thought, well, I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know Ed very well. I just met him, and I wonder what this is going to be like to have him follow me around for the day. And I had even a little trepidation. I thought, well, what's going to happen here? So Ed came down. He got a hotel a ways away, and he came down Sunday night. And the idea was to spend some time together on Monday, and then he would come to service Monday evening. And so I had some things to do in the morning. I try and get some exercise. So I biked to the gym and got a quick workout. And then I met Ed for coffee at one of our local coffee places here in Ashland about 10:30 in the morning. And we started talking. And we, of course, our minds and our conversation went towards God. And you feel when you have this exchange with another person and you're talking about God, what happens is it seems like there seems to be, and they're receptive and they're into it, there seems to be a ramping up of energy between you. And it was a wonderful conversation. And finally, it was a beautiful day, or it was starting to get nice. And I said, Ed, we need to get outside and walk. So we went out and we walked through Lithia Park. We walked way up to the head of the park and up on top, and got on a mountain road and turned around on this mountain road and started walking back towards town. And we were together and we talked for about 3 hours. And it was just magnificent. And the reason, of course, is that we share the most delightful, the most wondrous, the most fascinating thing that two people can share. And that's the joy of God, the pursuit of God, the aspects of God, all these different things. And we found we had some of the same challenges, some of the same experiences. So I needed to go back and go to work a little bit and do few hours of work in the office. And he said, I'm going to take this time to go up to the Buddhist monastery and take a look. I want to see what that's about. And I said, well, come over tonight and we'll have dinner. And then after dinner, we'll have our service. And so he did, and he got to meet Laura, and it was just absolutely delightful. And then our church service was wonderful. We turn the lights down low and we light some incense and we listen to a talk. And afterwards, we meditated for a really long time after the talk was over and after the Zoom was over. And it felt so uplifting. And I thought to myself later, and finally I walked him out to his car close to 10 o'clock at night, about 9:30 or so. And we said goodbye. And I felt such a tremendous closeness to him. And he got in his car and he left. And the next morning he drove back to Portland. And I was just afterwards, I went back in the office. I didn't go in the house right away. And I just thought to myself, this is kind of strange. I mean, how did this happen that this man comes that I don't even know, and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what this is going to be like. And then we feel all this joy and this connection. I go, how does that happen? What is going on? And then all of a sudden it came to me, and I go, oh God, oh, you did this. You set this up. You put all this together. You made this happen. And such a feeling of humility came, and gratitude, and thank you. And that was delightful. And God has many of these kinds of experiences ready and available and waiting for us if we open ourselves to that. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no idea. I thought, well, this isn't particularly my idea. He wants to come and visit. What's to come of this? What's going to go on? And then it just turned out in such a way that was surprising. And this can happen. This often happens with God experience. Meeting somebody that you didn't think that you would meet, or having an experience, or seeing something, or having something turn out. And it's only later that you go, my goodness, how did that happen? what that seemed like such an unlikely occurrence, and yet it just worked out perfectly. What could have caused that? And suddenly it comes to you, well, this is God. This is God working in my life and working things around and making things right and making things just as they should be. So sometimes when it's happening, we're thinking, wow, this is really something. What's going on here? And then it's only later that we go, oh my goodness, that was God shining through. God arranged that. He did that. He made this person show up at the perfect time, or I saw something, or I was able to do a kindness, or somebody did a kindness towards me. Just recently, Jerry has been writing us from her trip in Italy, and she had an accident and she broke her arm. And what a terrible thing to get injured when you're so far away from home. But Jerry is she's such a delightful soul. She talked about and she described her experience in the hospital and how kind the hospital workers were to her, and also how kind they were to each other. And she said they kind of have a delightful way of getting along. And, on the one hand, I was thinking, oh, this is so terrible that you broke your arm. And then on the other hand, it was so delightful hearing about her experience in the hospital and about how these people would come to care for her. They don't know her, but yet they're making her feel better. They're being kind to her. They're smiling to her. They're helping her in every way they can. They're setting up the circumstances so that her arm can heal properly. And what a beautiful thing it is. And I don't know why God makes these things happen. I don't know why people get injured and have accidents. But what's amazing to me is you hear these things and you think, oh, this is terrible. This is a tragedy. And then you get to talking to them and you find out, well, there was a silver lining. There was something delightful. There was something godlike. There was something that you never would have expected. You never could have predicted that this would come out of this. And so this is how God operates in our lives. And you say to yourself, maybe sometimes we say, well, that's good for the other guy. That's good for this person or that person. But how about me? Will that happen to me? Does that happen to me? And yes, it does. And we have control. We don't know what God's going to do. We don't know what God has in store for us, but we do know one thing, and that is that we can choose God. We can choose God in all circumstances, and we can choose to see God. And if we make a misstep, if we do something wrong, the other day I got angry at somebody and they were yelling at me and they were swearing at me. And I said, well, I'm going to tell this person to get back in their house and leave me alone. And I yelled at them. And later I thought to myself, I'll bet there was another way to handle that. I'll bet I could have asked that person in a calm voice, why are you so upset? What are you saying? To explain to me what you're thinking. And I'll bet that would have calmed him down. And I'll bet we could have found some kind of a meeting there. And so when that happens, when you don't perform in the way that you would like to, or you don't live up to your highest standards, don't beat yourself up. Just say, God, please help me make the right choice next time. And when I'm in a situation like that, it's scary or somebody's really angry, I want you to help me put my mind on you. Instead of reacting to that outward situation, instead of acting and reacting to that anger, God, help me, remind me of you so that I can act with you and I can do what you tell me to do. Sometimes God has you stand firm, but I would way rather have God having me do this thing or have that guidance than me just going all crazy and letting my emotions go and just, letting the chips, just fall where they may. I want that guidance. I want God to be with me because I know that when he is, things will turn out the right way. And on the outside, it might not be perfectly pretty, or somebody might be angry, or whatever it is. But I know that if my mind's on God and I act according to that light, it'll be okay, and I'll be okay. And that's a matter of choosing God. So there's all these different things we have in our life. There's all these different challenges. And we could apply this choosing God to any one of them, any one of those challenges. So my current challenge, actually, it's been an ongoing challenge, but I'm really getting serious. I'm really getting tough on this situation, is I am bound and determined to lose weight. You know, I look at myself in the mirror, and Lord help you, you look at yourself in a mirror from the back or from the side, you're not your ordinary view, and you go, oh my goodness, I mean, what has happened here? You know, things have gotten out of control. And so I'm bound and determined to lose some weight, and I exercise like a fiend. I'm riding my bike to the gym, I'm going on hikes up in the mountains. I do this online video with this gal named Grow with Joe, who's just fantastic. She's so sweet and cute, and I like to do her videos, and I'm dancing around the rec room. So it's not a lack of exercise, it's a matter of food. So sometimes, you know, I'm good, and then I'll overeat and I'll overindulge, and, you know, and it all goes out the window. And so what I've done is I've come to God and I've said, now listen, God, this is a ridiculous situation, and you need to help me. You need to help me if I'm going to have discipline, if I'm going to eat the right food in the right amounts. You need to help me do this. And so what I've asked God to do is that when I think about eating something that I shouldn't, or I want to overindulge, or whatever that happens to be, I say, God, I want you to come to me in that moment. I want to think of you. I want to put my mind on you. And I want you to be more attractive than this food. And I want my food to be your spiritual presence. And I want you to come into me, and I want you to satisfy me in a way that this food never could. And if I feel a little hungry or a little empty or a little hollow, that's okay. I want you to fill up that space with you in your presence. And so whatever challenge you're having in your life, if you're trying to do something, if you're trying to break an old habit, if you're trying to form a new habit, put your mind on God, and choose God to have you help you through that. You know, there's a book out there that's it's quite a good book, and I've read little bits and pieces of it. And my wife Laura read the whole thing. It's called Atomic Habits. And it teaches you about habits. And I was just reading a little bit out of it today, and it said, you know, instead of, a lot of the time people will think about an outcome. So let's say in my case, that's losing weight, or say another person wants to read books. They think that that would be good for them. That's what they want to do. So a lot of the time with in forming a new habit, we focus on the outcome. So we say, you know, I want to read a book. And he says a more powerful way to approach that is to actually change your identity. And so when you change your identity and you have a new identity of what you actually believe you are, then the actions flow from that naturally. So instead of saying, I want to read a book, you say, I'm a reader. And instead of saying, I want to lose X number of pounds, you say, I'm a person that's in excellent physical condition and at the right weight. And you identify with that, and you will start doing the things that bring about that outcome. So for those of us on the spiritual path, we can say, I am a God person. I am a God-focused person. This is my primary identity in life. This is me. I'm for God. I'm with God. I follow God's will. This is what I do. You know, it's funny. I remember years ago, I was listening to David. I was around David quite a bit. And he would talk about yogic practices, and he would talk about yogis over in India. And I would think to myself, you know, I would like to be a yogi. I would like to do that. I would like to be a yogi. And and I was just thinking as I was reading this book today, I was thinking, what a more powerful statement to say, I am a yogi. I practice yoga. I meditate. I focus my mind on the divine. I am a yogi. And once you that is your identity, every state thing starts to come from that. And your activities and your actions just naturally flow from that. So we have the ability, we have the free will to choose God at any time we want. We can choose God in this moment. We can choose God when we go to bed at night, and we can have a conversation with God as we're drifting off to sleep. Be with me tonight, God. Guide my dreams, guide my thoughts, and fold me in your arms. Make me comfy and cozy in you. And in the morning, when we wake up, we can choose God by saying, Good morning, God. We can chant his name. We can say, God, God, God. We can choose to put our minds on God when we go to bed, when we wake up, when we're eating, sleeping, when we're working, when we're traveling, when we're walking, when we're just sitting. We can choose to put our minds on God. And when we do, our lives change. Our lives change in surprising ways. And as you choose to put your thoughts on God and you choose to go with God, and you start to feel that guidance inside, you start to feel that direction, and you follow that, and you see where that leads. And you see how things start to change in your life, and how little serendipities and little situations start to come together that were unexpected, that are surprising, that you're going, wow, look at that. How did that turn out that way? That was really something. And this all happens, and this is all within our power. And we do it simply by choosing God. Oh, what a delightful journey we're on, and what a delightful group we have to journey with. So, thank you for being here. I think this is the greatest thing that people can share, this path. And we all have our challenges. We all are working towards this. I think one of the most inspiring things that David ever said to me is that when you're praying to the saints, and you have your altar and you're praying to Babaji and Lahiri Mayase and Sri Yukteswar, to Master, to Mother, to David, and you think to yourself, at some point in their evolution, they were exactly where I am now. And yet they made it. They went all the way. And that's what I'm doing. Sometimes the journey is quite wonderful. Sometimes it's very hard and very tough. But we stay on it, and we stay true to our cause. And we do that by choosing God as often as we can. And ultimately, every moment of every day. My love to you. Thank you for being here. And please join me in our closing prayer. O Heavenly Father,
O Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
I feel the wonder and the beauty of thy glorious presence in every part of my being.
I feel the wonder and the beauty of thy presence in every part of my being.
My heart is bursting with my love for thee.
My heart is bursting with my love for thee.
I feel the power of thy perfection surging in every cell of my body.
I feel the power of thy perfection surging in every cell of my body.
My mind and my intelligence are radiant with thy healing light.
My mind and my intelligence are radiant with thy healing light.
My soul is filled with the ecstasy and bliss of my communion with thee.
My soul is filled with the ecstasy and bliss of my communion with thee.
I and my Father are one.
I and my Father are one.
Blessed Spirit, I am he.
Blessed Spirit, I am he.
Om. Peace,
Peace,
bliss,
bliss.
amen.
Amen.
Mm,
Thank you, Peter.
thank you. May God bless you and keep you until we meet again.
Mm.